warm welcome to everyone. In my hand is the Ulefone Armor 28 Ultra, which is a big, heavy, and relatively expensive device, but that's what I'd like to talk about. My God. Well, I could say I'm angry right now, but that's exactly the point of this phone, because this is a shockproof, waterproof, all-proof, rugged phone designed exactly for challenging environments like this, designed specifically for this kind of use, and it handles this kind of treatment really well. And on top of all that, it's an incredibly feature-rich device with some very serious specs on paper, and accordingly, it's a rather expensive Ulefone device, but I'll talk more about its features once we're inside. So this here is the Armor 28 Ultra from Ulefone, one of their most expensive phones. It's not the most expensive because there's another one just like this that also has a thermal camera. That one is a bit more expensive, but this one also costs $750, plus of course the shipping fee when you order it to Europe. So it's definitely not a cheap device. However, if you look at what it can do, you might say that it's actually really pretty impressive. First of all, it's worth starting with the fact that this is obviously a reinforced device body, since it's a rugged device. Yet, despite that, it has a display on the back, as well as a small circular display, which is also an OLED screen. And you might ask, what is it good for? Well, on the one hand, you can think of it as a notification display, since it can always be active if needed, showing the time and notifications. And there are certain widgets on it. You can put the music player here. Or, for example, when you want to take a photo, if you want to take a selfie, you don't have to use the front camera, but you can use the rear camera system as well, because the preview image appears on this little display. So the design itself is also a bit special, a bit interesting, a bit extra, and you can see in every part of the device that is designed to be very durable. Basically, everything that needs to be is protected with rubber, like the USB port, the jack port, because it has one of those two. There's an infrared port on top, which is cool, and on the side, pogo pin connector for the endoscope they include. And with this, you can access extra functions. Plus, among the side buttons, there's also a programmable shortcut key. So I'd say that in terms of appearance, it's pretty solid. Obviously, it's not light. Obviously, it's not delicate. This is a hefty phone. And considering its size, the 6.67-inch display isn't actually that big, since you get the same size on any Redmi Note 14 as well. But just like on any Redmi Note 14, this one also has an AMOLED display with full HD resolution, and it's capable of a 120 Hz refresh rate, which is really great. And in the rugged phone category, this is extremely rare, so we were curious to see how it would perform. And actually, the surprising development is that its brightness is also quite decent, so we measured it with a light meter and got really good values. Our only criticism would be the minimum white level, so when you want to turn the display brightness down really low, it still remains high enough that in a completely dark room, it can be a bit harsh on the eyes. But of course, this is an outdoor phone, so it's meant for you to take it outside somewhere and you don't have to worry about it there. And at the same time, it should still do everything. And of course, in outdoor lighting conditions, the brightness that this display provides is more than sufficient. If your question is about the hardware, then the situation is that this is a surprisingly powerful phone with a Dimensity 9300, an almost flagship level chipset. And it comes with 16 GB of RAM and 1 TB of storage, which is, well, an unrealistically large amount of storage. Even flagship phones don't have that much, but here it's included by default. So you can really say they've gone all out. And if we look at the camera part from a hardware perspective, we can also say that having a 50 megapixel Sony IMX sensor inside, which is basically a 1-inch type sensor, that's definitely not a cheap sensor. And honestly, since they're putting an insanely large sensor into the phone, so it's only natural to expect that the device will be top-notch for photography and videography as well, but it won't be, and we'll talk about that in a moment. In addition, it has a battery of over 10,000 mAh inside. And of course, in the box, which I've already unboxed, you find this yellow Type-C to Type-C cable and a 120 watt PD fast charger, which is obviously necessary for this 10,000 milliamp hours. But even on its own, this 120 watt fast charger together with the cable represents a certain value. So if you check how much it costs to buy just such a charger head, you'll see that it costs more than 25 euros. So this really is a well-equipped, very robust, top-of-the-line rugged phone. Well, the thing is, there are other aspects to a device besides just what kind of hardware it's built from. And I have to tell you a bit here that our general experience with these B category Chinese manufacturers is that compared to the specifications, the pricing is always very tempting, very attractive, it looks like a good deal. But when you actually get the device and start using and testing it, the weaknesses start to show, because once again, it's not enough to just buy various components from different suppliers, throw them together into a device, and price it attractively. The other half of the work is to adapt the Android software to the pile of hardware that makes up the phone. And this is exactly what these manufacturers usually tend to skimp on. And Ulefone is no exception. We get the feeling that Ulefone started out in a direction that could eventually lead to their phones being great on the software side as well. But right now, they're basically just taking the first step in that direction, which is at least making sure that the device isn't completely abandoned when it comes to updates. Since this one comes with an Android 14 based system, but Ulefone says that Android 15 will also be coming to it, and they'll be sending out, well, let's say a security patch every 3 months. So you do get some level of support, but it's still very, very far from what the top tier manufacturers offer. At this point, there are two schools of thought. Basically, there are people who say, look, this is really just an outdoor phone. It's meant for making calls, using Facebook, social media, browsing, navigation, and emailing. And I honestly couldn't care less what software version it's running, what updates it has, or whatever. It's just a tool, as long as it does its job and nothing goes wrong with i10 after all. It was designed so that nothing would go wrong then. I really don't care about updates. And this series holds up just fine, as long as we're talking about the lower end of the mid-range. But when they pair it with hardware that's truly capable, hardware that would be a point of pride for any other phone as well, then in reality, you don't just want to use that phone outdoors or just for work tasks anymore. You start expecting more from it. You want to take decent photos with it. Otherwise, what's the point of such a camera? You want to record and watch videos. You might want to do your banking with it, play games on it in short. You want to do a lot of different things with it. And for all that, it would be really important for the software to be up to date and secure. Now, this is a stock Android, which means that Ulefone hasn't really added much to it. Basically, what they did add, you could say, comes down to two things. First, there's a section in the settings where you can program the customizable button. And second, there's a kind of toolkit included in it where they've collected some useful utility apps which you could actually hunt down from the Play Store as well. So there wasn't much effort put into this either. But in every aspect that doesn't relate to stock Android, you can see that they haven't translated it into Hungarian. The stock Android features are available in Hungarian, but as soon as you run into something extra, you'll encounter English instead. Honestly, I understand this too. Ulefone doesn't have as big a software budget as a major manufacturer. And Hungary isn't a big enough market for it to be worth translating just for this reason. They probably only sell a few dozen units in this country, so they don't bother with the translation. But honestly, these features and these things that Ulefone has been doing for years now, like the toolkit, the programmable button, and the graphics of the internet reader, and a few extra settings like the ones you find in a device with a camping lamp, or in this case, of course, a night vision camera on the back. They've been doing this continuously for many years. So honestly, I understand that with this Armor 28 Ultra, which really is an expensive phone, they're not going to sell many of these in Hungary. And if I look at it from that perspective, I say, okay, I understand that you don't want to bother with this to translate it into Hungarian. But now Ulefone actually has a whole lineup. This is the true charm of rural life. Now, Ulefone already has a lineup. And honestly, by now, they could have just translated it once and then put this software version on all their phones. But we haven't even gotten that far yet. So this kind of cobbled together feeling, these somewhat neglected software developments, unfortunately give you a bad impression, especially when you pay $750 plus shipping for a phone like this. But still, there are one or two extras that they've included. For example, there's the Easy Launcher, which is a interface that uses large buttons. And of course, in cases like this, we usually say that it's meant for older users who don't even want to take advantage of the phone's full functionality. Then don't buy a phone with a Dimensity 9300 because it's completely unnecessary. But it's also good to know that the Easy Launcher is an interface with large tiles. If you need to handle the phone with gloves on, or you don't have time to fiddle with it because you're in a work environment like that, but you still need to answer a call or check an email, then the Easy Launcher, for example, is really useful. It has a remote control app that works with the top infrared port, helping you add all sorts of household electronic devices. And of course, there's an instruments tool which basically provides things like a compass, sound meter, level, altimeter, protractor, and similar features. A large part of these are actually translated into Hungarian, so you can already notice some progress here. But otherwise, there's nothing extra in the software. And where it's most obvious that optimization is needed is the camera. They bought the Sony IMX sensor, which is almost 1 inch in size. It's a really great sensor. In other phones, you can take really good photos with it. But the reason you can take good photos with it in other phones is because the manufacturers of those other phones sit down and spend a lot of time making sure that with a good algorithm, the data coming from the sensor can be carefully and thoughtfully turned into a proper, well-structured output, ensuring that the intended result is achieved. At Ulefone, they didn't bother with this. Whatever comes out, they do something with it, and that's good enough. They can put on the box what size sensor it has, but in reality, the actual result is that the photos we took, well, how should I put it? These are honestly the worst photos we've ever seen come out of the sensor. They're still acceptable photos, so I'm not saying they're actually terrible. It would actually take some skill to mess it up that badly. But it could or should be capable of much, much better. The 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera, despite its high resolution, is actually pretty mediocre. It has weak dynamic range, poor details. At the edges, it's really not okay. And at night, it completely fails. There's a 2x digital zoom on the main camera. Since you can do that with 50 megapixels, there's enough information for you, or rather for the software, to do something with it. Ulefone doesn't do anything with it. Basically, it just crops the 50 megapixel image. And that's how you get 2x digital zoom. So there's absolutely no effort put into it. And we feel the same when shooting video with it, because for one, it doesn't have any kind of stabilization. The EIS, the bare minimum that's included, is pretty weak. Optical stabilization, well, just forget about it. That's why the recorded videos lack vibrancy, sharpness, and stability. They just aren't good enough. And we also have an audio issue, namely that in a device of this size, they could have easily fit 2 speakers. But instead, there's only one at the bottom. So anything you play back on the phone will only come out from one side. Of course, this single speaker is quite loud, since with a rugged phone, it's expected in this category to have a loud speaker. But unfortunately, once again, it feels like this aspect wasn't fully thought through. In contrast, it's really a great point that it supports 120-watt charging with a battery larger than 10, 0 mAh. It's really great that you can buy an endoscope for it, which lets you look into pipes and other tight spaces. It's also great that it supports 50-watt wireless charging. And it's great that wireless reverse charging works as well. It has 5G and Wi-Fi 6. So really, everything you could possibly list on a spec sheet as cool and awesome is included. I would mention one exception, eSIM, because eSIM support is not included. But how should I put it? So I'm kind of at the point where, yes, if I had to sum it up, I'd say it's still the same strategy. To make the biggest claims possible, to list as many enticing specs as possible on the phone's box, the brochure, and the website. Because compared to all that, if you look at how much it costs, it's not much. Instead, it would probably make much more sense to develop things thoughtfully. So I would say a circular external AMOLED display is not necessarily needed on a rugged phone. I would say that a Dimensity 9300, okay, I get that it's a high-end chipset, but if we're not really going to make use of it in this type of device, then it might be a bit of an overkill. The Sony sensor behind the main camera is absolutely over the top. If we don't touch the software at all and don't optimize it, then it's completely unnecessary and just makes the device more expensive. Meanwhile, it wouldn't be bad to have a stereo speaker, and eSIM support wouldn't hurt either. So I feel a little like the focus went in the wrong direction with this device. So maybe with slightly more modest hardware capabilities, a bit more added software value, and a slightly better optimized interface and cameras, this could be a really powerful phone. It's extremely useful that it has such a great display. As you know, among rugged devices, an AMOLED display is always really rare. And on top of that, this is actually a decent display even at this price point. It's okay, and especially so among rugged phones, but I don't necessarily think this is the ideal direction. Nevertheless, this is by no means a bad phone. So it's suitable for a lot of things. It's really powerful. The display is great for its category. It has cameras that, while not perfect, are still usable. It lasts a very long time on a single charge. It can be charged really quickly. It has wireless charging, so it really has everything you would theoretically expect from it. I just think they're trying to do too much, and when it comes to the crucial aspect of what kind of software they put on it, there's no resources, no capacity, and no budget left for that. So essentially, that's our verdict on this device. If someone doesn't care at all about the issues I've listed here and just wants a really powerful rugged device for outdoor use, then I'd say you won't really find anything stronger on the market. So here you go. This is it. You won't be disappointed because you'll get exactly what you expect. But if someone is looking for a more refined, sophisticated, rugged device made with greater attention to detail, then this might not be the best choice. Honestly, if I have to mention competitors, I'm not in an easy position right now because CAT has dropped out of the rugged device market as the Bali group behind them went bankrupt. Supposedly, there will be CAT devices again with the help of another company, but we don't know when that will happen or what kind of devices they'll be. Ulefone is still one of the best players in this B category segment because there's also Blackview, Doogee, AGM, and many other participants in this market. But I'd say Ulefone is more or less decent. Moreover, we also have a kind of benchmark here. For example, Teledyne, the parent company of FLIR, says that FLIR cameras are only put into Ulefone, Blackview, and Sony devices. And with that, we've arrived at the device that I think is one of the best rugged phones currently on the market, which is Sony's current flagship model. But let's not forget that there's also the MyPhone Hammer series, and we'll soon have a test device from that line as well. So we'll be able to compare the phones from this Polish manufacturer alongside Ulefone to see what they have to offer, both in terms of software, design, thoughtfulness, and pricing. So it won't just be the yellow-black branded manufacturer whose rugged phones we can show you, but most likely similar devices from other brands will also be coming soon. This was the rapid-fire tests of the Armor 28 Ultra, which, as usual, ended up with quite a bit of rambling. We actually have an even more detailed written review on Mobile Arena Who, which includes test photos, test videos, measurement results, benchmarks, and even display statistics. So if you're interested in those as well and want to know more, feel free to read our written review. It's linked in the description. And if you'd like to see more videos like this on the channel, don't forget to hit every button here that gives you the opportunity to do so. That way you won't miss any of our upcoming content. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.